When you're starting to get too busy with all the operational tasks to take the time that you need to invest into growing the business and to actually bringing in sales, it's time to delegate. It's time to bring in help, and it's time to pass those tasks off so that way you can use your strengths and your creativity to drive the business forward.
Well, hi there and welcome. I'm Joan, Posivy, host of the Side Hustle Hero podcast, the show that is laser focused to inspire you to start or to scale your side hustle income streams. About 4 years ago, today's guest, Brittany Sampson, was a partner in a side hustle that she, her sister, and her mom started. It was an online kids clothing business known as Sugar Dumplin Kids. After buying out her two partners, she doubled down on growing the business, and growing it she did, to revenues of 7 figures. She tells us how she did that, and yes, she did learn how to delegate. You'll also hear what it took for her brand to go from 0 followers to over 100,000. A smart and cost-effective way to know exactly what your customers really want. Smart steps you need to take when placing an order to an overseas manufacturer to avoid costly mistakes like she made in her early days. And creative ways to move inventory when something is just not selling. But before all that, I have a favor to ask. If you're enjoying what you're hearing in this podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment and leave a 5-star review at the platform where you're listening to let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thank you so much. Now here is my conversation with 7-figure brand founder, Brittany Sampson. Well, welcome, Brittany.
Thank you so much.
Well, so much has happened in your life in a relatively short period of time. Not that long ago, you had a full-time career. You're a mom. You started a side hustle operating out of your 500 square foot basement.
Yes.
Grew it. And then out of necessity, you moved to a 7,600 square foot warehouse and office with the business eventually grossing 7 figures in revenue. Is that an accurate description of your trajectory?
It really is.
Wow.
It's
You've been busy.
Such a crazy adventure. Absolutely.
Well, tell us about your side hustle, if you would, and why you jumped into it in the first place.
Sure. Well, I was working full-time as a property manager, and I'd been doing that for about 10 years, managing staff and all that. And I just kind of got burned out, honestly. I was working 40 plus hours a week and then had a baby and a toddler at home. So obviously that held its own challenges. So we had actually also moved to Thomasville, which that place was in Tallahassee. So I was commuting an hour back and forth to work every single day on top of everything else. So I found an opportunity in Thomasville to work for a construction company project managing, and it didn't take me long to realize that that is not what I wanted to do. And so I kind of wanted a way out from that. And so my mom had an idea to start a children's clothing brand. And so we all jumped into it together and started a Facebook group. And then it just kind of started taking off from there.
Wow. So you were working full time then while you were helping launch this?
Absolutely. It was a lot of late nights up till 2 a.m. But I was determined to work hard and build something great that I could eventually move and be full time with and let that be my main income.
Why a online clothing brand?
You know, it was something back when we started it in 2017 that it was a relatively children's clothing obviously is not new, but the concept of it was kind of new. And Facebook back then had a lot of growth opportunity. So we just really wanted to get in on the ground floor, so to speak, with that. And it was great that it was an online opportunity just because, you know, having the flexibility that comes with having a business online is just amazing. Mm-hmm. I absolutely wanted to take advantage of that. And so that was the main reason that we did it.
Yeah. In order for your mom to bring that idea to the two of you, did she have some kind of a background in online marketing or kids clothing?
She did not. No. She's a creative soul and she loved to design. She loves clothing in general. And so she had seen another person kind of in a similar way bringing this concept to market. And so she was like, hey, I think we should do this. And so we all just jumped in and started building this thing.
And at that point, the three of you had no experience in this as far as running an online business or kids' clothes. No.
Zero.
Wow.
Absolutely none. It's kind of crazy to think about.
And so how long were you continuing to work full time as you were growing this side hustle?
We built it for about 2 years before I quit my full-time job. We started it like March 2017, and by January, actually it was January of 2019 that I quit and did this full-time.
Were your mom and sister also working full time at it?
My sister was a teacher, so she was full-time teacher.
Okay.
My mom, this was her only thing.
Right. And what was happening in the business that caused you to think at that point, 2 years, now I think this is viable. Now I can let this, the quote unquote security, the paycheck, the benefits, all that kind of thing. What was happening in the business for you to say, I can give that up now and move to this full time?
Well, we had been experiencing since the beginning, that first year is always hard, right? Because you're growing it and you're not necessarily paying yourself a whole lot. If you do get anything in that first year, the goal is to put it back into the business, right?
Sure.
To see the growth happen that you want to see for the long term. And so we had dedicated to doing that. And then we started being able to pay ourselves little bit by little bit. And then that began increasing. And by the time I quit, it was like on the verge of being where I needed it to be. But it was like, I was at the point where I could no longer dedicate any more time to the business while working full time. And it was like something had to give.
Right.
So I wanted to see the business through and to see it grow and to flourish. And I felt like if I had the full-time hours to dedicate to that growth, that I would see the benefit from it. And so I just decided to make the leap. And it was honestly a really big mindset shift for me because I'd had a job since I was 15,
Wow.
So going from, even though we had kind of been growing it, I had a stable paycheck from someone else coming in. And so there was a little bit of fear that what if this doesn't work out kind of thing. But I just really felt a peace about it. And so I dove in and I knew the growth that we had seen. I think in that first year, we ended up, it was after year one, like we had brought in 100K or something like that. And so then the next year we brought in like 350, so I knew that it had doubled. And so I was like, well, what if I quit this to dedicate full time? And my sister did the same thing. And so then all three of us are all in on it. And so it ended up working out, that next year, I think we hit like 680. So,
right. In gross revenue.
Right.
Yeah. So many side hustles. You get to that point where it's, if I'm going to really want to ramp up sales and revenue, I just can't continue at my full-time job anymore. And so opt to do what you did.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What was it like for you to hand in that notice? What was going on in your head?
It was really surreal. Like I said, I felt a peace about it, but at the same time, it was kind of like, what am I doing? Oh my God. And so, but I was so ready to be done with that job.
Right. That made it easier.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Yes. And so I was like, I know what I'm doing over here and I like it. This is for the birds. So I think I'm determined at this point to make it work. Like whatever I got to do to make the business like take off and get what I need, then that's what I'm doing. And so I was ready. And honestly, after I did quit that job and then started working for myself, it was such a weird feeling. I like felt like I was in trouble or like I was like doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. Cause like
that's all you've known.
When you become your own boss, like you're so used to being told you have to be here at 8:00, not 8:03, not 8:02, but like 8:00 sharp. You have to take a lunch at this time. You have to come back at this time. You have to leave at, oh, we need you to work late today. But when you work for yourself, you can go to Walmart at 9 a.m. on a Monday if you want, and nobody's going to tell you otherwise, and it's kind
Absolutely.
of a cool feeling to have that freedom when that's all you've known is like people telling you when to show up.
Isn't that wonderful? And I wouldn't trade that freedom for anything. Once you've had a taste of that, it's wow.
Yeah. And that from that point on, I was like, and I started, the more that I've worked for myself, I'm like, there is no way. There's too much opportunity out there for me to work for anybody else ever again.
And then you're betting on, in my eyes, a sure thing. You're betting on yourself. One way or another, you're going to figure it out.
Yes, you absolutely are.
So at this point, there's the three of you, but as the business continued to move along, at some point, it just became yours. Is that right?
Yes, it did. I actually purchased the business from my mom and my sister, and I took on doing it full time by myself.
What prompted that change?
Well, a few different things. My sister and my mom, I love them and we get along great. I will say, running a business with family can be difficult. It has challenges.
Absolutely.
And not just family, like I'll preface that by saying anyone interested in like getting into doing a business, if you run that business with a partner of any kind, you're going to face some unique challenges. And so it just started coming to a point where we felt like for the integrity of our relationship outside of work, it was best to go a different route. And so the decision was made for me to purchase, my mom's portion and then my sister's as well.
You managed to preserve the family unit that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're taking care of a baby and you have like 3 different people trying to be the mama to that baby. It can be difficult, and we're all strong, independent, opinionated women, and it's a great thing, but it also brings its own challenges.
Well, I want to loop back to the startup phase.
Okay.
Where did you start? Like a person can see an opportunity, like your mom did with Facebook potentially blowing up in this area.
Right.
But how do you even start to go from that idea stage to now you're holding this piece of clothing in your hand and you're about to ship it out to your first customer? Like, I'm assuming you did not manufacture the clothing?
We did not. My mom actually found the resource of the manufacturer. I think she honestly did a Google search. So it just came from doing some digging. She located the manufacturer, and we kind of, all 3 of us actually have a lot of creativity. So we love being creative. We love making things and using artistic abilities. And so designing kids' clothes. And then, of course, I just had a baby and a toddler. So I'm like all in that phase. And so we were able to kind of jump in and start designing some pieces of our brand and then getting those clothing pieces in from that manufacturer. The manufacturer we located was actually what's called a small batch manufacturer. So they work with low quantities. Some of the clothing manufacturers, it's harder to get in with because they have a high volume that they require you to order. However, the one that we located, they accepted lower quantities. So we started with $5,000. We actually had a pre-order model, which I will say has its own challenges. So I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone, but if you can get the right manufacturer with the right customer base, it actually is a beautiful thing because we were able to run a pre-order in our group where basically that customer orders that outfit or that collection ahead of time. And then we can base our order to that manufacturer off of things that we've sold. And it allows us to be able to order what the customer ordered plus additional inventory to sell. Then we don't have as much invested up front. So that allowed us the ability to, because we pre-sold some of the clothing, we would run like a winter collection, a Christmas collection, our summer collection, so we would do one of those a month, and we would basically present these outfits that we had designed to our customer base. And then they would order what they would want from that release. And then when we would close the order out, then we would take those orders and place it with our manufacturer.
What kind of turnaround time were you looking at?
Anywhere from like 6 to 12 weeks. So, but surprisingly, the customers were cool with it. Like they would order for multiple kids and we would allow them to split pay it so they could pay half of the order, when they submitted it, and then they could pay the other half when the shipment was arriving.
Right. And so in this day of instant delivery or next day delivery, people were fine with that 3-4 months out?
They actually were, believe it or not. Yeah.
I bet you part of it too was your savvy marketing in the way you presented that.
We did try to do some of that. Absolutely.
What was the number of piece minimum that you were looking at back then?
They would do anything from 30 pieces and up. And then honestly, they would allow us to do some sample pieces too. So if we didn't hit our minimums with it, we could pay a little bit more and have it manufactured as a sample.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it created a lot of flexibility for us.
Yeah. So it reduced your profit margin, but at least you still got the customer order filled.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. And this was an overseas manufacturer?
It was. Yeah. They were based in Vietnam.
So there's a couple of platforms that I'm aware of where you can find manufacturers like that. Do you remember the one that you guys used?
Of course, there's definitely different platforms where I would recommend people searching for manufacturers. One would be, there's a fairly new resource called Pietra, and I think they have certain capabilities like sourcing for manufacturing, as well as I think they even have some drop shipping or like they'll ship it for you kind of aspect to make it easier for brands to get started. So that's definitely a great resource to check out. Alibaba is another resource to check out for manufacturers overseas. I would definitely recommend highly vetting your manufacturer before you place a large order with someone through that channel, because you can get put through the ringer. But if you're smart and you do your homework, then that's also a great resource where you could locate, manufacturers. There's also sourcing companies. If you like Google sourcing for whatever manufacturing you're looking for, whether that be beauty products, fashion, whatnot. And there's a few websites that their business is actually helping you locate manufacturing in other countries for what you're needing.
Okay. And what are some of the things that you did to vet some of those companies?
Well, thankfully, the company that we found, we honestly didn't do a ton of shopping around for that specific one, and we were able to develop a really good relationship with them. We never had a lot of issues. Of course, they're not perfect. Nobody is.
Yes.
I had used a couple of manufacturers on Alibaba, and that's why I said you want to vet them.
Yes.
I had 2 that I used. Each one was a certain kind of order. The one when I placed the order with them, when I got it in, it was not what I was expecting.
Oh man.
They're bad about doing a bait and switch. So they'll tell you because they want your business.
Yes.
So they'll be like, yes, we can do it. Absolutely. You want 30 pieces? Okay, cool. So then you go to submit the order and they're like, no, you need 30 pieces per color, per size, per style. Right. And so then like you've invested hours into talking with them and we can do it. And you've gotten the styles down, you've gotten the colors that you wanted, you've got all this homework done. And then they pull it on you that they need, like, instead of you ordering 120 pieces, like you're ordering 520 pieces at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously that's a higher investment. Now, because I tested these manufacturers out, I did not pre-sell anything that I didn't know 100% was going to happen, right? And happen in the right way. So this manufacturer I had been testing with, I didn't pre-sell any of that. So I'm, front loading all of the expense into getting this order in for my customers, because I want to make sure I'm taking care of them first and foremost, obviously.
Yeah.
Then it comes to the fact the snaps, I didn't have enough to get colored snaps. So they sent me like rompers that had metal snaps that are like silver when it's like an aqua colored outfit. So it looks a little cheaper. They sent them to me with pin marks all over the place.
Really?
Yeah. But it's like, then once you get the stuff in, it's kind of hard to like go back and be like, I don't want that,
exactly.
I'm gonna box this back up and ship it back to China, and you're gonna give me my money back for something you custom made for my brand. Probably not, right? So then you're in a situation where you're just kind of like evaluating and figuring out what to do. So my advice is, when you're vetting, 1, you want to make sure they've been in business for a long time. 2, you want to make sure they've got great reviews and the people that have used them have had good success with that specific manufacturer. The third thing I would make sure to do is order samples. A lot of them say that their sample price is kind of expensive. So you look at, oh, it's going to be $100 to get a sample in. But like spending that $100 to get a sample in for quality is way better than you spending 10 grand and getting a batch of bad product that you can't really offload easily to your customer base and still look like you want to look in front of your audience. So samples is a big thing, making sure fit is good, making sure quality is good, those types of things. And then also making sure that just throughout the whole entire process, they're not bait and switching you. They're telling you the truth. They're doing what they say they're going to do. They're shipping things on time, because if they can't ship you a sample on time, there's no way you're going to get your order on time either. And then obviously when you get late orders and things, it kind of puts a kink in your process. So,
because that would be a red flag if from the get-go you're getting excuses from them. Oh, it's delayed for this reason, or this is why we can't do it.
Absolutely. And then even after you get samples, I would recommend like placing the smallest order possible for like a couple of rounds, just to ensure that they are keeping on your timelines. And when you are receiving more than one of that product, that the quality remains like it should be. There's some of them that'll put fake pictures up too. They just steal pictures from other people's accounts and they use them as their own,
right.
And they're ripping off other brands' pictures. And so you want to make sure that the quality of their item actually does represent what they said it did.
Right. Kind of like a dating site.
I mean, it really is, if you think about it.
Well, during some of those times where you got product in that wasn't exactly what you thought it was, or it was way off the mark, what are some creative ways you've been able to basically sell the product?
Sometimes you just mark it down. You're honest with your customers and you say, hey, we use a different manufacturer for this. Transparency is the best policy. So when you get people mad is when you're not telling the truth, or you're not being honest, or you're not being upfront about something, so I just always clearly presented, said, hey, placed an order for this. This is not necessarily what we offer on the regular. However, because it didn't come in this way that we normally would want it to, we're going to offer it to you at a discounted rate. Here's exactly what you're getting. So that way, and you show them the pictures and you explain that to them thoroughly. So that way they're aware of what they're buying. And honestly, like people love a good deal, so
for sure.
like there's going to be the people who care aren't going to buy it. And the people who just want a good deal that their kid's going to get a stain on it and ruin it in 5 minutes anyways.
And grow out of it in a few months anyway, right?
Exactly. Yep. So those people, they're like, yes, count me in, how many can I get? So as long as you take care of your customers, they'll take care of you. And so we always tried really hard just to make sure everybody was taken care of.
And that's got to be one of the most difficult things, is trying to figure out what the market wants when it comes to clothing and shoes and colors and sizes. How have you handled it when you've ordered something that you thought was going to be a seller? There's nothing wrong with the quality. It's great. It's what you ordered, but it just didn't fly with your customers.
There has been a few times that happened to me.
It's got to be inevitable.
We avoided it a lot because of the model that we had set up, where we mostly ran pre-orders. That was a smart way for us to dictate our customers want this, and then our customers don't want that, so it's almost like the best thermometer, because you're constantly able to take their temperature of, they really love this, and then we're cutting that and not ordering it, so while we did avoid that for the most part, there was like some PJs that I ran as like it was going to be ready to ship bamboo PJ, and they flopped so bad. And honestly, like, you just got to mark it down and move on, like cut your losses, do what you need to do, purge it, go on a de-stash group, something, and just get it out of there. There was another item that I ordered, and I thought these were going to be great. They were like we did mommy and me matching robes. So they're like these cute little terry cloth, white and pink robes for mommy and daughter to wear. And we got them in, and I posted them, cute pictures, everything. Nobody bought any, not one. And I'm like, what am I going to do with all of these? And so I had this idea. We had an embroidery machine. So we would put monograms. That was one of our things that was a benefit of our clothing, where our audience really liked, we're in the South. So you monogram everything. You put initials and names on everything, okay. Every bag, every piece of clothing on your kid says your kid's name, so our customers eat it up. Because we had an embroidery machine in our warehouse, we decided to find a really cute font. And on the back of the mom robe, we embroidered mama. Okay. And then it was like a really pretty script font. And then we did a mini on the little girl's robe. I sold them. just from adding that. Like, there was nothing else we did. We just added the monogram on there, and it was like magic.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So you just got to get creative sometimes. And like bundling stuff, it's amazing how, if you don't have something that does well, but you had something else that does, like bundling is another great way that you can kind of, or mystery bags, because it's a mystery. We don't know what we're getting, and you put that thing in there and ship it out.
Well, along the way, did you have planning sessions where you'd set monthly and quarterly targets and goals, or was it more just fly by the seat of your pants day to day?
In the beginning, it was fly by the seat of my pants 100%. Because I'd never done this before, so I didn't know what I was doing. We're just gonna put it out there and go. But I will say, after I bought the business from my mom and my sister, I did start, and two, you've got to have a track record to look at to even know what your future looks like and your trajectory. So without those first couple years, and the first year's data is kind of hard to look at. Second year, you can look back at your year one and kind of get a feel, but you really want to start honing in on what you're really doing well. It's great to have 2 years worth of data to look at, so you can see the patterns and you can see which months are your great months, which months are the months that you kind of have some holes, you have some things you got to work out. So, I would say, 2020 is when I bought it. In the beginning of the year, what I like to do, and I think I started this in 2021, at the beginning of the year, I would go back and I would look at my whole previous year's sales history, and I would write that down on a planner month by month. Okay. What I had sold. Right. And then what I did was I set a goal for myself to increase that by a certain percentage for that month for this following year. And then I would look at what my sales goals were for each month, and I would plan my sales calendar based on what those numbers looked like. Because I feel like a mistake a lot of people make is when you are flying by the seat of your pants, you're like, oh, what am I going to do next week? I'll just run this sale, or, oh, next month I'm going to do this and that. And you kind of get stuck in this pattern of what you're doing. But if you never stop to take the time to develop, this is where I want to go, and this is the target I want to hit. Yeah. You've got to define that before you can back up and actually say, how am I going to fill that? How am I? Because just repeating what I did last year isn't necessarily going to get me there. In order to grow that, I have to add to that. How can I add to that? And the beginning step is defining what that number is. Right. And that increase in revenue is great. At one point, you hit that 7 figures in gross sales, and that's awesome. But a person could be doing that and have expenses of 1.1 million. Sure. So talk to us, if you would, about profit margins for the industry in general, and what was your experience? Profit margins for the industry in general, I'd say it depends on if you're private label or if you're just wholesaling to go to retail. So there's kind of two different models. Okay. For what we did, it was our own brand. So we're connected directly with our manufacturer and then selling that directly to our consumer. So I feel like that affords you a little bit better margins. Yes. Because we are using a low minimum quantity manufacturer, obviously our price points were a little higher to afford us that flexibility. Sure. So I was probably sitting at around like a 16% profit margin.
Mhm.
Now, as far as if you're doing like a resale, like a wholesale to retail, that's probably going to be a lower profit margin. So
Right.
I'd say, what is that? Around like a 5 to 10% margin, maybe.
Wow, it would be that low.
It could be a little bit higher, but when you're buying from Fair or other places, you're not getting the manufacturer direct price. Like you're buying from that middleman. So then that's driving your cost up.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, for me, I bought my products from Vietnam. So then I have to pay UPS to get it here. Then I had a 10% customs tax I had to purchase, I had to buy on all of my invoicing on top of that. Now, if you purchase from a manufacturer in the US or South America, the great thing about using someone there is you're going to avoid that customs tax. So, but the tax you pay on importing goods is going to be dependent on what you make and where you get it from. Like certain countries have a higher tax than others do. But then you're also paying to ship it to the customer. You're paying for your website and softwares that you use, your shipping and your fulfillment, your packaging and the labels and all the fun things. So,
and it's good that you point out all that. And anybody looking to get into the business would soon realize that if they don't already. They see that they can buy something for $50 and sell it for 100. That's not $50 profit in their pocket.
No,
there's
it's
all
not.
Those other expenses that you just mentioned.
So like, for instance, I think the year that I did, I'm trying to think what year it was. I made $360K in profit. Now that's not like what I actually paid myself, but like profit.
Yes. Yeah. For the company. Yeah.
And I think I did I feel like that might've been my 1.7 year. So
the thing is, you see these advertisements over the internet. It's a 6-figure company or 7-figure company, and that's fine.
Right.
But that doesn't tell the whole story.
No, it doesn't.
Right? In 2022, you hired 2 people and hit the 7 figures gross revenue for the first time.
Right.
To what do you attribute that fast growth?
It was a combination of things. I feel like we got in at the right time. Like we had our customers inside of a group. So the group had like a boosted visibility with Facebook's algorithm versus like a business page. And it also had that community feel and it's moms, so it was kind of like we made them all feel like family, but having them inside the group, I feel like that was instrumental. I feel like the product that we offered and the way that we branded it, the way that we marketed it on our website, I'm a tech geek at heart. So I wanted my website to look amazing and I wanted my content to look amazing, so we had all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted in that aspect. But then like to supercharge it, we ran the ads. And I'll say like in 2020 when Corona hit,
yes,
I know that put a lot of businesses out, but coronavirus like exploded my business.
Because you were already online. You already had all the structure set up.
We were primed and ready.
Nice.
And because everything shut down and then people started going online and living online essentially because you couldn't leave your house. So what else are you going to do? These moms like hop on and they killed it with ordering stuff. And like, I think my Christmas order that I ran in, I know it sounds crazy, but we would run our Christmas orders in July.
Right.
And so, because all of my mom's planned, so they want their pictures and their pictures are in October, so we've got to get it shipped to them in October. So in order to get that done, we would have to run the order in July. I ran an ad for it. I think I spent $3,000 on that ad and I added 7,500 people to my group in 1 week.
Wow.
And so, which we were already at, I think either 50 or 60, sitting somewhere around there.
50 or 60,000. Yes.
And so I was able to add those people within like 7 to 10 days. And it just like kept growing, and it got up to like 80,000.
This was a Facebook group.
Yes. Yeah. We built ours inside the Facebook group. We also had a business page. So that following is like around 50K, but the group itself is around 80. So I do feel like ads were instrumental. I had really great help. And it's one of those things where when you're starting to get too busy with all the operational tasks to take the time that you need to invest into growing the business and to actually bringing in sales, it's time to delegate. It's time to bring in help, and it's time to pass those tasks off. So that way you can use your strengths and your creativity to drive the business forward. Because like you can sit there and you can do the things that need to get done.
Yes.
Do I need to have orders shipped out? Sure. Does my stuff need to be organized? Okay. Does, this need to be done and that customer email needs to be answered? Absolutely. Are those things bringing in another dollar? No, not, indirectly maybe, but directly, no. So if I spend all my time drowning in the administrative and the operational tasks, then I have no energy or time left to invest. And your time is your most valuable asset, right? So you've got to take that time and build that in to be scrappy enough in the beginning where you can handle multiple things, right? Without having the additional people and the additional help. But then like once you grow it, you got to be willing to train someone else to come in, get those things off your plate. So that way you can actually have the time to scale the business forward.
That's wise. And there's so many options to do that these days.
Oh, there's way more options now than when I first started out. So
sure.
Outsourcing is amazing now. All the Fiverr and Upwork and
yes.
all the virtual assistant resources you can have at your disposal. So,
well, the clothing business was uncharted territory for you as a property manager. So looking back, what was your biggest surprise or something you didn't anticipate?
I didn't anticipate growing that business to 7 figures. I can tell you that.
You're like, how did this happen? This is fun.
Right. I know. It's really eye-opening and mindset shifting, to have something happen like that. If I could say there's one thing I didn't anticipate, it would have been like, there was so many times in that first year where I was like, man, I don't know about this. There's so many businesses too. I think that's why so many businesses fail within the first year of opening their doors. It's like, it is really mentally tough to be pouring time and energy while you're working somewhere else, making someone else money, to like want to come home and do the not fun thing of doing more work. Like, who wants to work 8 hours and then come home and do more work all night? Like, you want to have your rest time. You want to have your time with your family. You want to have that work-life balance. But I found for me, that was what was necessary to move the needle enough to get to that point. And I'm honestly so glad now that I did, because after being able to grow the business to what I did, and then honestly have an exit that was 6 figures, like, it has completely changed my financial future. And that never would have been possible for me had I stayed in my 9 to 5. And there was a certain point in time where I was thinking in my head, if you could have asked me like 10 years ago, like, if this is where I would be, like, it would not be the answer I give you. Like, I thought I was going to be working a 9 to 5 for my whole entire work career. If anything, I would be going from a site property manager to like a regional and stepping up the corporate ladder with that, and making my money that way. And then hopefully I have enough to save and put into retirement, my 401k, that when I'm 65, play the game. And now that I've played the other side of it, it is so eye-opening. Like, the real money and the real wealth building tools are in the people who are willing to take the risk to start that side hustle.
Absolutely.
And build it into an asset. If you want to keep it and that's what your forever looks like, and that's what you love and want to do for your whole entire career, great. But if not, you could sell that asset that you created and either flip it and start over, or if you make enough, like, that can be your retirement plan. So,
and it's not just the financial gain you've made, Brittany, but it's who you've become as a result of all the challenges and all the obstacles that you've overcome, the growth that takes place that you can now apply to other ventures and to other people and to your family. And they see mom out there just killing it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Since the business was continuing on a healthy growth trajectory, what made you decide to sell?
Even though I loved what I was doing, I actually am still involved in designing for that brand. But I really wanted to take a step back. And because I had put in all the work to build it, it had honestly grown to a point where it was beginning to consume a lot of my time.
Okay.
And I felt like I had worked really hard on the start of it and building it and it being my baby and it growing. And I kept seeing this growth pattern and I'd gotten it kind of to the goal in mind that I wanted to get it to. And then I was starting to look at my next 5 years, like what does that look like for me?
So what kind of work are you now doing that you've sold the business in the building?
Now I am offering coaching and consulting services to other business owners who want to build an online brand, who want to start or they already have an existing online business and they are looking to grow that or to scale that. That's what I love to do. That the strategy, the marketing, the streamlining, putting systems in place, all of it is what I want to help others accomplish in their online business. I feel like a lot of business owners get the shaft. So when you go and you look for a service, if you go and you look for how do I scale my business or whatever, you've got your ad agencies over here and all they're willing to touch is an ad.
Right.
But you could have all this wrong over here that you got to fix. And your ad, they're going to set up for you and you're going to pay them all this money and you're going to pay for the ad itself, but it's not going to convert how you want it to convert because they didn't tell you about this over here that you got to fix. Right. Or your person fixes your website, right? And then there's nobody coming to your website to look at anything that you have because you have a traffic problem.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Or like you're on the social media end of it and you're killing it, but then you have no website to send them to. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Brittany?
They can connect with me on my Instagram account, Digital Britt Sampson, or TikTok. It's the same handle. And then my website is also brittsampson.com.
And I'll put links to all that in the show notes.
Awesome.
So what's your best tip, Brittany, to inspire others to start or grow their side hustle dream?
I would say pick something that interests you, lean into the action side of things, and don't procrastinate. A lot of people want to think something to death and you want to analyze it to the point where you don't take action because you always feel like you need to know more or you need to learn more, you need to research more. And it's such a trap that even I still have a tendency to fall into. It's not allowing yourself to think too far into it. Really, the best successes come from deciding I'm going to do this and I'm just going to start. And you start with the first step, define what your first step is, do that first step. If you don't know how to do that first step, Google just that first step. Don't think about anything else in the beginning. You need bite-sized little pieces and you get step 1 done and then you move on to step 2. And you don't think about step 767. You think about step 2 and you get step 2 done. And then you just keep moving yourself forward. And as you do that, then you end up creating this thing that you never thought was possible and everything else will work out along the way.
Well said. Well, thank you so much, Brittany, for sharing your insights on what it takes to launch and grow a successful online retail business and for being today's side hustle hero.
Thank you so much for having me, Joan. I appreciate it.
Brittany's final tip focused on the importance of taking action. Too often, we way overthink things. I've certainly been guilty of that. She said, figure out the first step and do it. Don't worry about step 767 yet. You're not there. Maybe it's time you stop all the research and Googling and trying to figure out in advance how everything is going to work out. Maybe it's time to launch your new side hustle, or maybe it's to scale your existing one to the next level. As you take that next action step, you'll find it creates momentum and the next steps will be shown. But you gotta have faith and trust. Go as far as you can see, and when you get there, you'll see how to go further. If you're really having difficulty taking action on that first step, check out episode 61 of this podcast where I share my best productivity hack to skyrocket your results. The entire episode is only 9 minutes long. It's a way to ensure that your most vital, important, move the needle forward type of work gets done. It'll help you create a successful day. Continue to put enough of those together, and you've got a successful life you can be really proud of. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find links to Brittany's website and social at our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know you're listening and tell me how this podcast is helping you. You can tag me or send a DM on Instagram at Joan Posivy. Thanks for listening and hustle on.